that the correct modeling of this will help you in the long run with respect to how you've made the application reusable and how you make different features applicable in our application. Right? So suppose you make a mistake on this one that can cause a great deal of harm, but if you model it right, it will help you a lot in the long run. Okay, so I hope you guys can see my screen. So let's yeah, so we have an exercise as well around it. Let's see. Okay, let me just alright. So couple of things that you need to understand before we get to take a look at why we have why this is important and the way we need to use this. So if you see yeah, okay, if you see this here, okay, I have basically, if you take a look at this screen here now, I have both my applications, which is yeah. So I have both my applications, both my not applications, both my cases, 𝐶_𝐶laim and 𝐿_𝐶laim. Okay, see, this is a 𝐶_𝐶laim case and this is an 𝐿_𝐶laim case. Okay, so what happens here in the long run or during the data modeling is that we should try to create properties which are reusable for both 𝐶laim and 𝐿_𝐶laim at a level which is which can be inherited by both. Okay, so if there is some common property for both 𝐶laim and 𝐿_𝐶laim, then we should ensure that that remains in a common class. So let me first show it here like this. Here, let's log in into an application first, and then so when it becomes okay. So the first thing that you need to keep in mind always when you're going to do the data modeling, so let me just mention it here. The first thing that you need to do is to use properties which are or create properties model or put common properties at the level which is usable for all case types. Okay, so if you look at our class structure here like this, so if you see here, you have the 𝐶laim and 𝐿_𝐶laim cases here. Okay, and I have some other ext, int, sample, all these additional things here, which ideally you don't need all these, but in real time sometimes you might just have 𝐶laim, 𝐿_𝐶laim, and so if there is a property that you're creating and that is needed for both 𝐶laim and 𝐿_𝐶laim, then you should ensure that it is at this 𝐴G_claim1 proc. Okay, so we should be very clear to make use of the common to keep common reusable entities like properties, or for that matter any other feature, at a work pool level. So this level, which actually encompasses multiple claims or multiple cases, is called as a work pool. Okay, so first thing that you need to understand here is
Rahul, can we not have them as different data class? Always I had problem in understanding this
Yeah,
model.
I'm getting at it. I'm getting at it. Just let me complete the explanation. So I'm getting at it. Okay. So example, keep it at work pool level. Okay. So now what happens here is, so let's now try to understand this a bit more. So you have like two things here. So we have two cases here. Okay. Consider this. So we have case which is 𝐸_claim, and then you have the other case which is 𝐿_claim. Okay. Now, as I was saying, you can put common properties at like one level above this. Okay. Or if you think that it is going to be used, may not be necessary that you have to keep it at one level above. You can keep it at the org level like this. You can keep it at this level, or you can keep it at the claims level, or you can keep it this level, or you can keep it this level, or you can keep it the work pool level. Okay, but now I'm trying to make you understand what is the concept of work pool first. Okay, so the work pool will be like, consider it more like a container which is going to hold this both these cases together. Okay, not just these cases, anything else in the future that the work pool is supposed to be, if you take the literal word meaning itself, work pool, which is like a pool of all the work types that can be there in the system. Okay, so you have different types of work objects or cases. They're pooled together, and that pool is called as a work pool. Okay, so we have the concept here. So this is the work pool. Okay, so this work pool will have different pool, and the reason why the work pool exists is because you can map both these things in to have the same key. Okay, so you can have it saying that you can define some common properties. Okay, first you can, if you want, we can make it all point to the same database table, which means that both these case steps will go to the same database table in the backend in Pega. The other option is to make sure that common entities are placed here. Okay. Third thing is keys are defined here, which is very important. Okay. So, which is like they will every work object or every case that we have, the actual runtime objects will have some keys. Like work object will have like a unique key when they're stored in the database. So that will become key, which are the properties which define the keys or become part of the key will be defined at the work pool level. So what I mean by that is, suppose when we store the 𝐸_claim in the database, it will be stored like, say for example, I'm running a 𝐸_claim case. Okay. So I gave some information here. Okay, so this is going to create a work object now, and this work object is going to have a key it's going to push an entry into the database table, and that is going to have a unique key in the database. Okay, so let us look at the key first here. So if you go to the SPA work page, I have something called as 𝐵𝐶_key. See here, this is a unique record for this pizza dynasty, for this particular entry. So this entry, whatever we have, is a combination of this work pool name, okay, followed by a space, and then you have the ID of that particular object. So where we have configured that is in this work pool level. Suppose I go to the definition of this one. So it says here, can you see here, it says keys, and then you have this ID here, P by ID. So the concept here is this key is always a combination of this work pool name, after which whatever property that comes, you can ideally, if you had no other entries, you can add more keys here. You can make it PX, create date time. You can have a number of entries here, which will say what is the key of your particular work object. Okay, so this is like just one thing that you have to understand about why we have a work pool. Okay, so you can put some common properties and make sure that they're all pointed to the same database table. Then importantly, keys are defined here. Okay, now that's a quick thing about work pools. Now let's go back to our data modeling now. Now here what you need to understand is, suppose in the 𝐶_𝐶laim we have say for example, assuming this scenario, we have to create a property here, property 1, okay, and like say for example information about customer, okay, so customer information. So we may name the customer first name, then we can make it the name of the customer information like last name, mail ID, mobile number, okay, and we may need address. So the address itself can have like street, house name. Then we can have things like city, state, country. Then we can have his like financial information or his like social security number. Okay. Then we will need his even here we might need his PIN code. Okay. So basically what happens here is, for each of these 𝐶_𝐶laim, 𝐿_𝐶laim and all this, we will have some list of properties. Okay, so because this property will be needed by both this 𝐶_𝐶laim and 𝐿_𝐶laim, meaning that both these properties are needed for the 𝐶_𝐶laim and 𝐿_𝐶laim, isn't it a lot easier to put it at the work pool level rather than creating these properties again and again in 𝐶_𝐶laim and 𝐿_𝐶laim, right? So suppose this first name, last name, email ID, these are like common properties which are needed for both these cases. So we think that it's better to put it here. Okay, so we will put it at this level. Okay, so this level rather than putting it at this level here. This is a wrong design, so you see, don't put it here because this is common reusable entities which can inherit from here, and this can also inherit it from here. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now the question is, even at the work pool level, is it actually worth putting it just here? Because in the future, when the application scales, you might not just have just one work pool like this. You might have multiple work pools like this. So you can have multiple applications, right? So multiple applications and multiple work pools, and it can scale up a lot. So in order to keeping all that in mind, isn't it better to separate the data completely? This is actually even called in programming world as data oriented programming. So So which means that you keep the data separate from the business logic. Okay, so a couple of things here. So it says keeping data separate from business logic. Okay, because in the future this may be needed by multiple people. It's better to keep it separate the data completely from the business logic. So in our work pool or in our work class, we will have only our flows, activities, user interfaces and all those things. We will not tie the data to this work pool or to this work cases directly. We're going to keep it completely separate. Okay, so keeping this has a lot of advantages because it can be reused by multiple work pools and all that. And the second thing is keeping the data separate from business logic will ensure that in the future it's more efficient, in the sense that we will not have to worry about changes in the data to impact the work pool or the work object logic in a big way. Okay, it's easy to make changes in the long run. Okay, I'll show you how. So now when we go for this approach, this is data-oriented programming, which is keeping data separate from business logic. So I'll just show you if you see here, I think it's called as, I think it's called data-driven design, not data-oriented programming. Data-driven design. I was just thinking about that. Sequence steps, yeah. It's slightly different. It's not data-oriented program, it's data-driven design actually. Okay, so just need to try to. So for now, just understand that we want to keep the separate, whatever name we call it, we want to separate data from business logic. Okay, so in order to do that, what we will do, we will have some separate entities here called as data objects. Okay, which is completely out of the work pool. So I will have some data objects here. Or for better word, I can say they're called data types. Like they're supposed to, I mean, you can have like separate types of data. So you can have data type. Okay. So what happens here is it's a lot easier for me to separate the data types based on their functionality. So what happens in real world is that there may be a lot of properties, maybe numbering about 1,000 or so. So we need to ensure that the properties which are common or which are specific for a specific business use case, they need to be separately placed. Okay, so it's a lot easier for us to make changes and to understand the different data types if we had separate modules for each of these. So the way we can segregate that is based on their function. Suppose we can have a data type for like customer info. Okay, so what this would have is, what this would have here is, we can have the first name, you can have those common properties here. First name, last name, then email ID, mobile number. So all that we can have it here. Now we can have another data type here, which is called as address. Okay, now that can be like house name, street number, city, state, and then country. Right? So you have like separate data types, each having its own specific functionality, right? So what I did now is I moved these things, these into this one here, right? So this also move it here. All that I moved it out of the work pool now. So what I did, I separated the data completely from my business logic. So what I have now, I don't have this, clear it. This is also not here. This is also not here. Okay. Now in my 𝐶_𝐶laim and my 𝐿_𝐶laim, all that I have is this common reusable. Like I'll have my business logic here. That's all that I will worry about. Will not have my workup, data model or any of that anywhere inside the 𝐶_𝐶laim or 𝐿_𝐶laim case. Okay. Now that you've separated the data types here, it's now we have to reference these data types. Okay. Now to reference a data type, we have certain types of properties in our application. In Pega, these are called as page properties or page property. Then we have page list property. Then also we have called as page group property. Okay. So what these properties do is they have the capability to reference these data types. Okay. So now to link this work object, these are like, consider them as like pointers or something like that. Okay. This page property can link to this customer info and get its structure. So from our work pool, when I reference this data type, say for example, I give the page property name or something like customer info. Okay. Then the way to reference is from our work pool or from our any of the cases dot customer info dot first name. Then you will automatically have references like dot last name, then you have references like email ID, references like dot mobile number or things like that. Okay, so this way as a page property, you're going to reference these data types directly like this. Okay, now I can have a page list also, which is or a page group, which is like repeating elements of these. Currently I just have only one set of this, which is like to make it things more clear. Suppose I want to get multiple addresses like home address, office address and all that. So what I can do, you can have it something like this. Say for example here. Okay. Suppose I have address, okay, which is a page group property. So I need to get these structures multiple times for one particular instance. So the way I can reference is dot address of home. Okay, then dot can have house name. And then have dot address of home dot street. Similarly, I'll have more combinations. Okay. Okay, now another option I can have for this is dot address of office dot host name. We can have dot address of dot street. So this is called as a page group property that we have. which is going to reference different group of, again we're going to have repeating elements of these. And if you have just one element, if you need only one structure of this, basically one instance of the structure, you can do it. If you want multiple repeating elements, you can have using a page group or a page list. The way page list will work is, suppose I can say, assuming that I have a data type called as, say for example, okay, another good example that I can give you is, say I have credit cards, multiple credit cards. Okay, so I can say credit card of 1 dot number. Then I can say credit card of 2 dot number. This is another option. Okay, so this is the difference. Page list and page group are very similar to each other, just that the subscript, when it is numeric as 1, 2, 3, then you call it as a page list. Page group is when you have a alpha subscript. Okay, so you have words as a subscript, then you have it called as page group, otherwise you call it as a page list. Okay, now let me just summarize what I was telling you. First thing, you separate data from business logic. Okay, that's what we did. So what we did, second thing that we are doing is we're going to create references, which is property, to get structure, to create reference property to get structure. Okay. Now, third option that we have is third option third thing that we learned is to keep properties at the appropriate level. This property workpool or case or div or any level that you think deems fit, that you deem fit. Okay, so now isn't this a lot more clean way to take a look at how we will have a data structure? So keep in mind that we can make it a bit more complicated by even having this data type embedded within this also. That's also another option. So you can have, again, say for example, you can put address within this one, so which will just point to this one here. So you can create a page property here, right, inside this customer info, which will point to this. So that's also another level that you can go at. All right, any doubts on this? I think there were a couple of questions earlier. Like, Sudha, is that clear? You had a couple of questions you wanted to know. Is that clear? Why we have data types now? Does it make sense?
Yes, it's clear now. And the data types and data objects are like the other names to call each other. Is it? It is data object in 7.1.6, but it is
they actually don't have any consistency. They're like really idiotic in many ways. They keep doing the stupidity, keep changing the names here and there, and at the end of the day, to get everyone confused. I don't know why Pega keeps doing that. So consider just follow my cue here. So whenever I say data type or anything, only one thing stands true, that in the backend these are all classes. Okay, so we can have classes, so like this. So when I say data type, okay, I say that data type is customer info, It means that in the backend we have a class. So the backend, it's actually a class. So the classes, if you remember our first when we designed our application, so here, sorry, in this one, if you remember here, yeah, you would have seen data types here. Can you see here the data here?
Yeah.
So we had classes like AIG-data-countries. We is going to have the list of countries. Another one that we had was, so okay, there's one more thing I will tell you in a bit. So if you see here, I think there is another option also. Hold on. I think we had customer info also mentioned here. Yeah, claimant info. So if you see here, the claimant info. This is like AGI claim data. So you will have the word data in the class names, which is called as a data dash classes, which is supposed to hold the data information. So whenever I say a data type, it actually in the backend they just mean a data class. So the name can be org level. If it's an org level data class, okay, so it will be called as class. It will be called as org hyphen data hyphen. I think name should be yeah, the data type. Okay, if it is you have some other level, that is, if you see here, we have at the division level. Okay, so div level class, so it will be org hyphen div hyphen data hyphen data type. Okay, so keep in mind that whenever they keep changing these names, the data objects are always referencing the data type, data class in the backend. Suppose in here, when I open this particular data object here, like the data type or data object, whatever they call it, just know that they're all referencing the same. Suppose I click on this one, and there's an option called as view definition. Okay, when I click this, you see here it says data dash address. Now if I open this claimant info, it's a view definition, it is also claimant info. But one more thing, keep in mind that these data types also have the, as of now we just saw these data types to hold only the structure of the particular properties, particular functionality, but they also have the capability to store the data also. Like if you have a local storage of data, so you can have like list of countries or some common list of data that you can store there, which again you can reference using a page property and get it, or you can use a data page or anything to get that. So apart from the separating data from business logic means you're separating the data structure, as well as you can even separate the data also.
Rahul, I have one stupid question here. Actually, we have data class and that derives from org and division and unit and hyphen data class. But our work class is also like that, but doesn't have data. It derives from work class. So till before work, it is all the same. If we think in perspective of pattern inheritance pattern. So after from work, it is different. So but our work type. Work class is actually having work in the class name. How can this access the data class? Like it is not exactly have the same pattern.
It's not inheriting. There is no inheritance here. That's your question, right? You're asking how is it accessing? There is no inheritance here. That is why we have the page property here.
Okay, but we can embed these pages into our work class properties and we can refer it, is it?
Correct. These properties If there was inheritance, I don't need these page properties here, or this page list or page group. I don't need these complex properties here. I
Okay, but
can
I
just
can
directly just reference it directly. Like they're like in my class hierarchy, I can reference it. But because it is not there in my class hierarchy, that is the reason I need to have it as a pointer here.
Okay. In that case, we can add any properties defined in any data class. Need not be in the same application. Okay, fine. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an advantage, right? So if I create this customer info, but keep in mind one thing is that the rule set can have create some kind of a dependency there. So that suppose this data structure that we create is assuming like this image here. You see here there is a data dash countries, AIGI data dash countries, which is currently in a AIGI rule set, which means that this is at a org level, which means that any applications which are in my same organizations, any n number of applications that I create, all of them can access this. Okay, but whereas this one is in a rule set called as AIGI claim, which means that I can use it only in applications which have this claim division in them. Suppose I am in some other application, because of this rule set, it will prevent me from accessing this. Although technically with that page property, I can access it, but because this rule set is in a different division level, and if I'm not using this rule set, then I cannot access it. So that's just additional point there. But as you said, as long as I have it in my application stack, this rule set, I can access any of those properties. Right, any other doubts?
So Rahul, in today's session, initially we discussed work pool level, we can have one different table, right? So right side.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So are we going to discuss about that in future?
Not much. Is there any doubts, anything around that? Tell me.
No doubts. I wanted to know how we can configure that.
Okay. So reason why I didn't go into that, okay. I will cover that in more depth. I think you had asked that question right earlier, or was it you or someone else? Yeah, don't worry. We'll cover that in a little bit more depth. We'll see how to configure that class. Yeah, I think it's already noted down here. So I just touched upon that because it has significance here. We will cover it here. Okay. Generally, the class is not there. Yeah.
One basic question. What is exact difference between class and rule set? If anybody asks what is class and what is rule set in Pega perspective, what should we answer?
Okay.
This is very basic, you know?
Yeah. So just know that class is so there are two classes for every. Okay. Even before that. So what you need to understand here is in Pega, a couple of things. There is rules and there is data. Okay, rule is where we have the business logic, and when the business logic runs, it will create a data. Okay, so or the actual work object or whatever. Okay, now the rules, all the rules are actually instances of. So I would say that rules are instances of rule classes, okay, and data are instances of data classes. Okay, so I can say that it will be instances of data classes, okay, including work objects. Now classes are nothing but okay, so now you have these two things. Now based on both these logic, the explanation of class varies. Okay, so if I were to talk about what is a class, you need to understand that class is supposed to be okay, even before that I will say what is applies to class. Okay, so first thing here is every rule you should know that every rule has a couple of unique identifiers. Okay, so the first common unique identifier for a rule is a applies to class, then the other one is the ID, and another one is a rule set. Okay, so what the applies to class will do is it will set the scope, or it will define what is the applicability of that particular rule. Sets the scope of the rule. Okay, that is what class means with respect to, when you say applies to class with respect to a rule. Okay, ID is as expected, it's a unique identifier. Okay, and rule set is present so that it's easy for you to identify different for version control, actually version control, okay, for release management and things like that. So in order to achieve these particular functionalities for an enterprise level application, we have, for every rule we have three identifiers. One is a class, other is ID, and third is a rule set. The class here sets the scope of the rule, which when we give different class, different hierarchy and all that, that is what we have for applies to class. Okay, now this is applies to class, like the word applies to class, which sets like inheritance or a hierarchy for a particular rule. Now coming to this point here, when I say instances of rule classes, say for example if you take an activity, okay, or a property, they are actually instances of rule hyphen obj hyphen property. Okay, the other one what we have is, say we have activity, that is rule hyphen obj hyphen activity, and data will be here. Say for example we have data dash address, okay, or we can have AGI, then we have something like 𝐬𝐶KM. Okay, so what happens is at the end of the day, these okay, whenever you say about classes, two things you have to understand. One is applies to class, which talks with regard to a rule. Okay, that's the first point that you have to know. So for a particular, and the second thing that you have to know is they are actually, whenever you have a class, it can have instances provided it's a concrete class. Okay, so you can have abstract classes where you can just write the logic and leave it, or if you have a concrete class, then it can have instances. Okay, and it can be either rules which will define what is the type of rule, or it can be even just data alone. That is the second thing that you have to know about classes. So this, in normal terms, I think you will call this as PX obj class, and that one is I think PY class name. So just don't get into that yet. But when someone asks you what is a class, know that there are two things that you have to tell them about class. First is the applies to class. It is used to set the scope of a rule in whenever you create a rule. Okay, so it will define what is the level or what is the applicability and with respect to a class hierarchy. Second thing is these classes will have instances. Classes are supposed to have instances provided they're concrete, and they can have the rules themselves are nothing but classes in the backend. They can be, say, property is the rule obj property instance, activity is the rule obj activity instance, like that. All the rules have their own implementation or their own instances, and this is also a place where they have the actual Pega backend logic also. So I will show that. Backend implementation logic is also added. What I mean by that is, suppose you open a rule obj activity, okay, class here. Now if I look at the definition of this one here, of the advanced tab, you can see here the primary implementation class in the activity assembler. So this class will define how an activity is also created. So when you save an activity, what is the backend Java code that is generated? All that is inside this var file inside what Pega gives com.pega rules engine generator activity assembler. Okay, so class is also a place where you can have the primary rule assembly logic present. So just know that as well. Now, rule set is a additional feature that Pega has that you need to understand, which helps in version control and release management and all that. So this is there in any. This is the equivalent of, say, for example, SVN or something that not that complicated, like SVN, GitHub, and all the source repository and all that we have in any enterprise software development systems. So that functionality is achieved in Pega using a rule set. Okay. Does it make about sense? I haven't given you a proper definition, but I told you what are the functionalities, like why we need to have a rule, why we need to have a class.
Yeah, I got it. But in general, what is rule set means? Collection of rules.
Yeah, that of course.
As per definition.
Yeah.
Yeah, but indirectly, what is class means? It is also a collection of rules. But here we can create instance for a class, and we can know the scope of that particular rule. But coming to the rule set, that does not happen. That is the major difference, right?
Right. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. So, okay. Any other doubts here? Anything that is need to clear? So, yeah. Now let's.
Here, actually, regarding the work pool class gets created when we create the application.
Yeah.
So can we have another work pool under the same application? If that's possible, how can we do that?
Okay, that's simple. So what you will need to do is, give me a second. So you just have to create a class rule form, class rule type, and using the class rule type, you just need to push that. That's all. So I'll show you. You just have to create a class rule type, and you make it as a class group. That's all that you need to do. It's nothing.
I mean, it gets associated with the application in which point? That's the
class name. The class name. Suppose you come wait, I'll show it to you here. Now if you want to create a new say for example I come here and then I create a new class. Okay. So I can give the class name here. So I can give the class name like here. Okay, I can, instead of work, I can give work like this, and then I can give some other name like see here, if you see here I've created some ext or something like that. So by giving the class name here, this is a way you can define it. So then after this, after creating the class type, I can make it concrete, and I can say this is a class group. So whenever you say class group is synonymous with work pool. Okay, so you can create the class, you make this as a class group, and that's it. That's all that is needed here. Right.
So the key is the class name. Class.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Now we're going to model the 𝐶_𝐶laim and 𝐿_𝐶laim cases for us. Now I think it should be pretty straightforward for us. So yeah, so if you see here, this is the 𝐶laim case. Okay, and this is the 𝐿 case for us. So we're going to create the claimant info as a common property. It's like first name, last name, date of birth, social security number. So we're going to reference, we're going to put this page property, which is there, which is needed for both 𝐿 and 𝐶, into a work pool, and that page property we're going to reference this data class here, AGI claim data dash claimant info. Okay, and next one is we will have some common properties which is not needed for 𝐶 or 𝐿, like some single level properties that again we can create it only in our 𝐶, like registration number, chases number. Okay, similarly at 𝐿 we can have some single level properties which we don't want at a common level, which is only needed at our level. Then again we can create it here, health condition and then smoker or not or something like that. Then yeah, so then another thing that you have to understand here is, so yeah, suppose we want, here we'll have a page list as well of diseases. So we'll have like disease name, since what is the medication, what is the doctor. So we'll have a page list here. This is again going to, if you see here, this is again going to go and talk to a disease list here. The properties of that is like disease name, since medication, doctor name, and all those things. So this is a data class defined at the implementation level for the 𝐿 case type. So if you see our application here, I will have that under the data class, I have diseases here. See this one. See here, the cost of treatment, doctor decision. So this is something that I created in my application, 𝐸𝐯𝐼 data dash disease. So what I did is clicked on this, and then I clicked add data type, and then I just created it here. So I think in the next class I will show you how to build all this. For now, just understand the theory. I will give you an exercise. You guys try it. If you're not able to do it, we will do it in the next class. Okay. Now, another concept here that you have to know about declare index, which also I will cover in the next class. I'll just note it down. But so we are talking about next need to be covered. Okay, so yeah, now if you see here, another thing we can have is we can have a static list of data as well in the system, like a countries data class. We can have a data table. So I was telling you earlier that apart from just holding the structure or separating the data from the business logic, like the data structure from the business logic, we can make sure that these data classes hold some data also. So an example of that is here on this one. I can have, like, if you click on countries here, I can make sure that it holds the data as well. Under accounts, you will have the data here. So I'm not going to explain to you how this is done. This is because I had asked all of you to do that exercise for support app, and this was all covered very clearly there. Let me know if there is any doubt. That is why it is important that you do that exercise. So if you see here, the standard exercise support app. So I hope all of you have done that. Yeah. Otherwise, please do it, because you're going to miss out on important topics that I will not cover again in the CSSA, because these are all CSA topics. Okay, so if you see it, adding new data type, data elements and all those things. If you see, I have shown how to add a data type. Then I think I have even about create the page with the source, I think 15 or something here. Yeah, you see here the bugs, list of bugs. I think I have a report definition or something for that. But yeah, I think this is covered there. If you wanted to build the data source, I think even with these bugs here, this one, I think I had mentioned it here to have it from a data page, or from in that data class itself we have held that value. Yeah, you see here this one. So if you see here, we have the data type called as product info, which has a source as a data storage, and we will have the properties here. Similarly, we can have something called as countries as well. So this will have this list of countries. Make sure that you complete this exercise because this is a very similar one that we have here. So if you see here, we have the countries list here, which is going to be like the name of country and all those things here. Okay. So again, I've just mentioned the things here. This is the exercise that you have to do for today. Okay. Referred from, I've just mentioned it again, but make sure that you try this exercise today. And so that, sorry, separate data from business logic. Okay, right. So this is a couple of things that you need to understand. Yeah, so this image is already there in the class notes. Let me know if there are any further doubts, but this is about data modeling. So this is an exercise that I want to give you guys. I want to give you guys a day to do this. So we will be meeting now the day after tomorrow, where I want you guys to try this exercise and come back to me. Okay. And let me know if there are any doubts around this. Then in the class we will review it on your machines. Okay.
Rahul, the homework is for today or tomorrow?
It's for today, and like you can try it today. You can take a day. I'll give you a day off tomorrow. Try to understand this, and for those of you who have not completed the support tab, make sure you complete it. Then the day after tomorrow we will be having our next class the day after tomorrow, where we will review what we have done, what you guys have done, both the support request application and this one, whatever we have, this exercise also.
Okay, tomorrow we are taking the day off. I mean, we don't have class.
You don't have class the day, so you have to complete this exercise full end to end, and you need to complete this exercise also. Okay.
Yeah, Rahul, you explained the concept about data class access with Ruleset, connecting with Ruleset. Can you please reiterate once in 1 or 2 sentences? I mean, I kind of have confusion there.
No, which is the topic that you have confusion about?
No, you you told yeah, data class can be accessed from work class provided there is a condition with the rule set.
Yeah, okay. So what happens here is, if you see here, the data classes that are created by the system for us, this one here. So if you see here, by default, whatever the data classes that are created, at the end of the day they are classes. So these classes also reside in a rule set. Okay. So what happens is, if you are trying to access this particular class, okay, from another class, say for example class 1, okay, you're trying to access this particular data class by using a page property or anything, then what the system will do a validation check whether you have access to this rule set or not. If the system finds that you have access to this rule set, then it says, okay, no problem. If it doesn't have access to this rule set, then it will give an error saying that you do not have access to this rule set.
Okay, it is a matter of access group and rule set validation, or it is a validation of the rule set is available for the application.
See, when you say access group validations, you mean that whether this rule set is in your application stack or not.
Yeah.
Remember, we learned that stack, so we just need to say for that particular operator, is this rule set there in the stack or not.
Okay. That's clear. Thank you.
Alright, I think that's all for today, guys. So make sure you complete all these exercises, and once you're done with all this, only then we will be once you're done with the standard exercise, then it becomes a lot easier for us to build our application. Okay, so make sure you complete it, and we can meet up the day after tomorrow then. Okay. Alright, thank you guys. Let's meet up the day after tomorrow then. Okay, good day everyone.
Good day.